Okay, so with this expression, what is the greatest common factor of 3, 15, and 9? Well, think of numbers divided into 3, 15, and 9 evenly. 3, right? So a 3, and then we also have, do all of them have an x? Yes, and how x to the what? What's the, all of them have at least an x squared, right? So we can factor out a 3x squared. Do all of the terms have a y? No, so we cannot factor out a y. So if we do 3x squared, and then we'll put parentheses, what is left? What's 3x squared divided by 3x squared? 1. So we'll have 1 plus, what is 15 divided by 3? 5. And if we factored out the two x's, then what's left over? The y, right? So we'll have 1 plus 5y minus 9 divided by the 3 is 3. And then we factor 2 of these x's out. So how many are left over? 1x. And then we still have y squared left. Okay? So we divided each of the coefficients by 3, and then we subtract the exponents of the variables. Oh, on this one. Yes. Thank you. Just making sure you guys are awake. So 1 plus 5x to the, how many x's do we have left in that term? 3 of them. And then we have a y. Did you say that, Cindy? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Speak louder so I can hear you. Okay? All right. There we go. That's all we can factor. Yep. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, go ahead and write that problem. Okay, if the leading term, and I need everyone to hear this, okay, if the leading term is negative, you want to factor out a -1 or -3, whatever it is, you need to factor out a negative from everything. So if this is a -4, what number divides into 4, 10, and 6? 2. So we're going to factor out a -2. And all of the terms have at least a to the what power? Squared. So we can factor out an a squared. And do they all have a b? Yeah. Yes. And what's the highest power that we can factor out? Just to the first. Good. So just, oh, we don't want to put the 1. We'll just leave it like that. So -2 a squared b is what we're factoring out. So now, oops, I erased part of that. So now what is -4 divided by -2? Will be +2 or -2? Positive. So since we factored a negative out, then all of these terms will have the opposite signs now. Okay? So we'll have +2. We factored out both a's and how many b's? B to the third. Right? And then will it be +10 or not 10. It's going to be plus or minus what number? Half of 10, 5. So it'll be -5. And we factored 2 a's, so how many a's are left? 1 a. And we factored out the b. And then will it be, what's -6 divided by -2? +3. Then we factored out 2 of the a's, and we factored out 1 b, so what's left with this term? 3b. Okay? Questions on this one? Hey. What are you saying? Okay, number 3. Write down number 3, please. 4x squared minus 20x minus 24.
I totally just remembered what you said.
Sweet. I'm impressed there. Okay, is there a common factor between these three terms? Do they have a common factor? 4. So we're going to factor out a 4. What's left over? X squared minus, what's 20 divided by 4? 5. What's 24 divided by 4? 6. Now, this is a trinomial, right? Because there's 3 terms. And the number in front of x squared is 1, right? It's just 1x squared. So when this happens, then you can just look at the constant and think, what are the factors of, and this should be review from last year, what are the factors of negative 6 that add up to the middle term? So let's list all of the factors of negative 6. 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. So listen, if it's negative 6, then one of them needs to be negative. So which pair, if one was negative, would add up to negative 5? 6 and 1. And which one would have to be negative to add up to negative 5? Negative 6 and a positive 1. Everyone wake up. So if those are the two factors, then all you need to write is, don't forget our 4 we factored out. All you need to write is x plus the 1, since we said 1 will be positive, and x minus 6. Because we couldn't factor this anymore. Okay? But this one is a trinomial, and the leading coefficient is 1, so we can usually factor those most of the time. All right, so is there a number that we can factor out on number 4? Do they have a common factor? And do we want to factor out a negative 2 or positive 2? Negative, because the first term is negative. You always want your first term to be positive. So if you're factoring and that's negative, factor out a negative, okay? So we're going to factor out a negative 2. Can we factor out a y or just a negative 2? Yes, so just a negative 2. So what will be left over once we factor out a negative 2? Y squared plus or minus? Minus 10y plus half of 42 is 21. Good. Now we have a trinomial because we have a y squared, a y, and a constant. And this is a 1. So we want to look at factors of what number that add up to what? Yep. So we want factors of 21 that add up to a negative 10. So factors of 21, we have 1 and 21, 3 and 7. So if they have to multiply to be positive but add up to a negative, that means they both have to be negative, right? So which pair, if they're both negative, add up to a negative 10? 3 and 7. So they're going to have to both be negative. So then we can write, don't forget our negative 2, we factored it out at the beginning. Then our answer will just be y minus 3 times y minus 7.
Wait, why? Like, outside with a y squared minus 10.
Because you can factor this even more. Is that what you're asking? Why wouldn't we just write this answer? Is that what you asked me?
Like, is the final answer the 2, the y minus 8 bucks? So do we just not do the other part yet?
Well, you need to do that to factor out the negative 2, and then you need to factor what's, so after we factor out the negative 2, then we factored what was left, which is just this part. Okay? So that, but you do want to factor out the negative 2. You have to have that negative 2 there. I mean, you need that. Is that what you're asking? Mariah, let's do another one, okay? And then if
I understand this, but
you don't,
know why that's the answer, like, and you don't do anything with the y squared minus 4.
we actually did do something with this. We factored it even more. We factored it to be y minus 3 times y minus 7. Okay, does that help you? Okay, let's do one last example in your notes. So write this, 5x squared minus 30x minus 80. What is the greatest common factor of all three of these terms? A 5. So if we factor out a 5, what is left over? X squared minus 6x minus, how many times does 5 go into 80?
47 times?
No, 16 times. Okay, now can we factor what's left? So can we factor just this part? Let's see. We're going to see if there are factors of negative 16 that add up to negative 6. So what are the factors of 16? 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. So if it has to multiply to be a negative 16, that means 1 needs to be negative, 1 positive. Okay, so positive 2, negative 8. Those will be the two factors. So then what do we write as our final answer here? 5 times what? Or x is our variable, but yeah. X plus 2, x minus 8. It doesn't matter the order as long as you have the 2 positive and the 8 negative. Okay, let's do some more on our assignment. Mariah, did that help clear up your, okay.